Angel Reese, though. What I found most interesting about this list is where ESPN ranks their face of the league. Unfortunately for Angel Reese, the polish seems to be melting off the turd. ESPN has tried to convince us that Angel Reese is the face of the WNBA. Not only is the matriarch of Me-Bounce the face of the league, according to the media, Angel Reese is the most dominant basketball player in the world.
Angel Reese's story was meant to be straightforward. Unstoppable ascension, media darling, instant stardom. This concludes the conversation. However, ESPN then released a ranking that gave the impression that the entire script had been subtly changed while no one was watching. She is being promoted as the WNBA's future in an instant. The next moment, she is seated in a position where admirers ask her a question that no one anticipated. How can a league star turn into simply another name in the crowd?
In case you're wondering, Angel Reese, still not good from the field. 3 for 7, 10 points. I mean, good God almighty. Not good. By the way, Mystics defeated the Dream. Defeated the Dream. That was ugly. No doubt about it. Speaking of ugly, let's just address this. When does lame-ass Atlanta Dream fix the lighting and change the court color?
You know you don't want to miss this one, so hit the like and subscribe buttons before we continue. The most bizarre aspect of this whole incident is not that ESPN published another of its notorious rankings that suddenly ignited the internet, but rather that the illusion finally broke for the first time in a way that even casual viewers could not ignore.
Let's talk about Angel Reese, Atlanta Dream debut. Of course, we covered it, but I didn't make a video. You know, it's a lot of videos I didn't get a chance to make because I've been busy. But yeah, we here. So make sure y'all tap that like button, hype the video, share it, all the good things, man. My takeaways were Angel Reese fit right in. She's exactly what the Atlanta Dream needed.
Because no number 5 superstar could be found when the list was released, and people started looking for Angel Reese. They couldn't even locate a centerpiece in the top 10. Instead, what they discovered revealed a far more significant tale than any headline could.
Okay? Even, of course, Angel Reese, she was giving Lauren Best the business. Okay, but Angel Reese, I see her frustration in this game. I really, really, really want Angel Reese to stop trying to shoot through defenders. She kept eating up the floor, and it was making me so upset because I'm like, I don't want her to risk any injury. She gets the ball blocked from her, from whoever, and she just boom. You can see Angel Reese just continue just repeatedly just fall on the ground, fall on her knees, fall on her lower back. Okay, that's her tailbone.
This is the unsettling reality that has been present for several months, like a shaken Coke can, quietly increasing pressure. And as soon as that list was released, it instantly went viral.
It's not rocket science to see that since her arrival and the rest of that 2024 class, WNBA has skyrocketed.
Finally! We have a WNBA player willing to admit that Caitlin Clark is the reason for the elevation of pretend basketball into the mainstream. Finally, we have a WNBA player willing to admit Caitlin Clark is the reason that they are no longer making minimum wage.
Fans were informed for almost 2 years that Angel Reese was more than simply a star. He was the star, the face, the focal point, and the catalyst propelling the WNBA as a whole into a new era of significance. However, that story abruptly lost credibility when it came time for a major network to rate impact, productivity, and value. And that's when awkward situations begin. You don't need to tell them every 5 minutes if they are genuinely the face of a league. And you most certainly do not place them outside of the top 20 in the hopes that no one would notice. Add something even more significant to that, something that occurred prior to the rankings even declining. Something that revealed what was actually happening without the need for discussions, analytics, or heated takes. The first game, the stadium, and the crowd are all lies. Additionally, the fact that there were more empty seats than spectators when people arrived for that first stretch prompted a question that no one wanted to address aloud. What precisely are we being offered for sale here? Above all, who are we being instructed to believe in? Because another reality was taking place in front of everyone at the same time those vacant stadia were making the rounds online. And it was one that had been apparent for some time, but continued to be ignored. We were aware of this.
The Atlanta Dream ended up besting the Chicago Sky. And I want to talk about Angel Reese's performance. Overall, on the box score, it looks like she did pretty good. 8.7 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals. But she went 2 for 7 field goal percentage, shooting 28% from the field and 4 of 8 from the free throw, 50% on free throws. All right. Angel Reese still doing Angel Reese things as she missed wide open shots, things that she should have made, she didn't make.
We've always known this, but speaking it aloud used to have repercussions since. As soon as you pointed out what was going on, you were accused of everything but being wrong. And yet, here we are. Because one name continued to do the exact opposite while the league battled to fill seats in other locations, drawing eyes, attention, and energy in a way that seemed nearly unjust in comparison to everyone else. Naturally, that name is Caitlin Clark. This is where the discussion normally becomes nasty, because people think it's about picking sides right away, but it's not. It's about admitting something that can no longer be disregarded. Since Caitlin Clark entered the market, demand for tickets in some areas has increased, turning national broadcasts from background noise into must-watch events. The WNBA was also being talked about for the first time in a long time. It was being discussed, contested, analyzed, music, and, above all, observed. It's not a coincidence. That's the effect. This is the point at which the ESPN rating transcends being merely a list. Because, despite their contentious nature, lists are meant to represent reality. Furthermore, this score showed a gap between story and reality in addition to disagreement.
She can control the paint. Angel Reese going to do that. Angel Reese did look nervous, though. She did look a little bit timid. It was kind of emotional being back in Chicago. She got a lot of love, by the way. If there's any narratives out there that Chicago don't love Angel, it's definitely not true, because the city of Chicago was still cheering for her. They gave her a standing ovation. I think they showed a truth. They gave her a truth, if I'm not mistaken. I think they could have said it for the season, but.
Because you quickly become aware of something if you look at that list and see players who are ranked higher than Caitlin Clark, players who do not move the needle in the same manner, and players whose games do not draw the same kind of attention. Furthermore, the logic behind it is even more illuminating since, when the language and frame are removed, the main point is that Angel Reese is exceptionally skilled in a certain field. Contributions that are important but do not define a team, including effort, hustle plays, and rebounds. Put differently, a role player. That's hardly an insult, though. Everyone is feeling animosity, despite how it may sound given the current situation. Because it causes friction not only among fans but also within pre-existing storylines when one player becomes the undisputed center of attention, particularly in a league that is attempting to expand. And it was all interrupted by Caitlin Clark. Not slowly, not quietly, not right away. And despite the fact that the data, the number of viewers, and the ticket sales all go in the same direction, there has been an odd resistance to this change, an ongoing effort to distribute credit fairly and avoid putting too much emphasis on one person. However, this is the truth. When a league has stars, it grows.
She got all kinds of ball on Angel Reese, but that wasn't even the worst one. Angel ended up getting all up in her feelings here. Oh, she gets mad. Oh, yeah, you got the shit blocked out of you. I mean, come on. Angel's mad she got her shot blocked.
Stars, not just talented athletes, not just reliable performers. Regardless of the opponent, the standings, or everything else going on around them, these are the players that fans watch. And whether people like it or not, Caitlin Clark is that WNBA player at the moment. That does not exclude others from rising. This does not preclude Angel Reese from becoming anything more. However, this does indicate that the current hierarchy is not as intricate as some would prefer. As a result, ESPN creates a peculiar middle ground where no one is completely satisfied, but everyone can understand what is going on underneath the surface when it issues a list that subtly downgrades Angel Reese, while yet hesitating to fully raise Caitlin Clark to where her effect implies she belongs. It's a gradual, hesitant change from one story to another. And those are always messy, because it's hard to own up to your mistakes, especially when you've spent months constructing a whole plot around them. However, the figures are accurate. The attendance is truthful. The audience is truthful. And even the loudest narratives eventually have to catch up with reality, which is precisely how it feels right now. A steady correction rather than an abrupt collapse or spectacular decline. There is no erasure of Angel Reese. She is being reinterpreted.
In the paint and try to put up a layup. She gets blocked, she gets a little bit of contact, she's boom, smacked down on the floor. I was getting very, very nervous for her. And the Washington Mystics with their rookies and they bench, Lauren Betts, Georgia A. Moore, she's now back in, guys, again last year. She got drafted by the WNBA, obviously, to the Washington Mystics. She tore her ACL, literally prior to training camp. Or it was either prior to training camp or during the training camp, right? Georgia A. Moore tears her ACL. She's out throughout the entire season last season for the Washington Mystics.
And because it necessitates a real-time recalibration of expectations in front of everyone, it can sometimes seem worse than direct criticism. Ironically, the league is now in a better position as a result of all of this, because they are not diminished by the presence of a true breakout star like Caitlin Clark. Opportunities are created. It increases visibility and draws attention to players who might otherwise go overlooked. This story is far from finished, as evidenced by the empty stadiums, the increasing viewership spikes associated with one player, and the abrupt relocation of another. Because whether Caitlin Clark is underappreciated or if Angel Reese was overvalued is not the true question. How long before everyone quits acting as though this were still a debate is the true question. For those who establish their platforms on a totally different interpretation of reality, the discourse becomes much more straightforward and difficult when everyone stops acting. And this is when things take a turn that most fans did not anticipate, because the problem is now more than just headlines or rankings. It has to do with credibility.
News out of the W today is Angel was traded to the Atlanta Dream. For Taylor Rooks, Chicago side traded away Angel Reese in her prime. She was a 2025 Unrivaled Champion, 2024 Rookie of the Year runner-up behind Caitlin Clark, two-time All-Star, two-time rebounding champion, averaging a career triple-double with 5.2 million Instagram followers. I think that actually does matter in the W. Also, ticket prices for the Atlanta Dream are already exploding for the 2026 home opener after the Angel Reese trade. They've surged from 38.
The audience was taught a very particular tale about Angel Reese for months. A narrative that portrayed her as the focal point of a new age, the impetus for the league's rise, and the figurehead who would propel the WNBA into the public eye. Nevertheless, that narrative began to falter in ways that were impossible to deny as the dust cleared and real signs of influence were investigated. Furthermore, there is currently a glaring discrepancy between the person who is shown as the face and the person who is truly making the difference. When you go back to that first run of games, when even the most devoted fans were forced to face a question they had been avoiding, the disparity becomes even more apparent. Whereas everyone, if this is the league's face. The atmosphere in games with Caitlin Clark, on the other hand, offers an entirely other story that doesn't require justification or defense, since the energy speaks for itself. The demand feels natural rather than artificial, and the attention comes organically. And the tension really starts to grow because of that disparity. Promoting a number of stars is one thing, which is beneficial for any league, but pushing a narrative so forcefully that it begins to conflict with what fans can see with their own eyes is quite another.
Trade. Here we'll go straight to the point. Angel Reese got traded to the Atlanta Dream today for, I use the word Tic Tacs, others use Skittles. We can talk about Kit Kats, M&Ms, Reese's Pieces. But she got traded for virtually nothing. And I said it very clearly in my video, and I'm not taking that perspective that some other people want to go with, oh, she was toxic, oh, she was this. I'm not doing that.
At that point, it begins to feel more like persuasion than marketing. Additionally, Audiences, particularly contemporary audiences, have a very low threshold for being told what to believe when their personal experiences indicate otherwise. This time, the ESPN rating was different because it revealed a change that had already started in the background rather than merely igniting controversy. A subdued admission that the original story may have gone too far. A cautious retreat from the notion that Angel Reese was the league's undeniable centerpiece, and a gradual realignment of positions. Angel Reese is now in a situation that many athletes encounter at some point, which is where things become interesting. A situation where the story surrounding it shifts, yet the focus does not go away. Performance, development, and consistency will now be more important than media narratives or headlines, rather than being viewed as the final product. Ironically, that could be just what she needs. Because growth becomes meaningful, improvement becomes apparent, and success seems earned rather than presumptive when expectations are in line with reality. However, the broader discourse surrounding the league is still changing as that change takes place. And it keeps returning to the same inevitable conclusion. Every sporting era has its defining characters, the athletes who, by garnering attention that benefits everyone in their immediate vicinity, enhance the entire ecosystem.
Man, I don't know how I feel about it because Angel Reese has started to become a dominant sports figure in Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Angel Reese had the Chicago, Caleb Williams was out there at the games. Like, she had also started to bring out the celebrities in Chicago. Now, to Shady's point, Atlanta is quite literally the mecca of black entertainment, right? That is where, if you're doing TV shows out there, BT headquarters is out there. Tyler Perry has a studio out there, along with living out there, and he's one of the biggest black television moguls and influencers of the culture in regards to what they're doing out there. So I do like it.
Furthermore, balance cannot be achieved by rejecting that reality. Fans are not perplexed by what they are witnessing, which leads to bewilderment. However, that gap is gradually closing as more information is gathered, more games are played, and more real-time events occur. The stories are changing. The ranks are changing. The discussions are shifting from what should be true to what is. Amidst all of this, Angel Reese finds herself at a crossroads that presents both opportunities and challenges. Because being undervalued, fairly or unfairly, has a way of making one more focused. It inspires motivation. It strengthens resilience. It compels players to change. And she still has a chance to advance in the league if she embraces the change rather than fighting it. The players that naturally dominate the spotlight will continue to be in the spotlight, and as reality gradually replaces perception, the talks will continue to grow louder. And even though everyone else is still catching up, the audience already understands where things are going, if this recent period has demonstrated anything.